welcome back, and thanks for being with us here on Morning Live. Now, April is Human Rights Month here in South Africa, and the theme of this year's Human Rights Month is the Year of Charlotte Maxeke, promoting human rights in the age of COVID-19. And it marks the 150th anniversary of the birth of the human rights campaigner Charlotte Maxeke. Maxeke is widely credited for having paved the way for women emancipation in this country, having become the first indigenous South African woman to graduate with a BSc degree in 1901. And she was also a strong campaigner for women's participation in church and, of course, on the political front. And this year, she would have turned 150 years old. And to help us unpack her legacy, we're joined by award-winning journalist, author, and activist in own right, Zubeida Jaffer. Zubeida, good to have you on Morning Live. Welcome.
Sakina, wonderful to be here.
So firstly, Zubeida, what is it about Charlotte Maxeke that led you to write a book about her? Your book, of course, Beauty of the Heart, The Life and Times of Charlotte Maxeke. What drew you to this icon?
Sakina, actually, it was purely by chance. I was on the campus of University of the Free State and saw a poster, and that led to a conversation with Professor Jonathan Jansen, and eventually to my agreeing to research the life of this amazing person. It was really by chance, because normally I take long to decide on what I'm going to tackle, because you live with a person for a long time. But with Mum Charlotte, it was very strange. I just agreed. I just said, yes, I want to do this, and I can't really explain it, just some feeling.
I'll tell you what, we're grateful you did, because so often we lament the fact that we don't know our history in this country, that we don't know our icons. Very often, it's the same hollowed ground that is traversed over and over again. So it is absolutely great when we veer off that beaten track. But now that you've done the research about her, Zubeida, how would you answer the question, who is Charlotte Maxeke?
Charlotte Maxeke, teacher. I know a hospital is named after her, but she's a teacher. And she was a young person with a vision of education, of becoming educated, but also in helping her people become educated. So one of the first things she did, for example, when she came back from the United States, she went back to Ramagopa village, where her father was from in the north, and she had arranged night schools for the herd boys to make them literate. Now, this was a vision she had and a thought she had as a young girl. And this was what makes her, a trailblazer, a person who cleared the path for us, who opened the way. And I'm sure she must be, wherever she is today, she must be looking down and being absolutely amazed to see that there are so many young women now who are becoming graduates.
And quite apart from the political activism of Charlotte Maxeke, Zubeida, you also write of her as a leader in church. So let's unpack this aspect of her life, given the patriarchy in our society generally, and perhaps more pointedly in the church.
Mum Charlotte was the one who brought the AME Church to South Africa. I think that must be far more celebrated, but she was the one who connected with the AME Church in the US, and then introduced her uncle, who was a priest here, and so started the conversation and the eventual arrival of the AME Church in South Africa. So by the time she came from the US, there were already members of the church in Ramagopa village, and she came back to connect with all of that. So that too is an extraordinary story that has to be researched even further than what I have. And she also challenged the church and the political hierarchy at the time, her contemporaries, and said that women should be firmly part of the interaction, social interactions in these organizations.
And I'm curious to know, how was that received at the time?
You know, she arrived back in South Africa in 1901, and then she couldn't travel from home, from Cape Town, because of the Anglo-Boer War. You know, the war that was actually a war of white-on-white violence, and she then couldn't go home and remained in the Cape until she was able to, until the end of the war, till she was able to travel to the north. But on her way home, she stopped in Queenstown at the Lessington Mission Station, and she attended the Congress, the SANAC Congress, which was the forerunner of the ANC, and she tabled the idea that she should be allowed to participate. And the 40-so men set up a committee to discuss whether she should be allowed, or women should be allowed to participate. And they came to the conclusion that it's not on, she can't. And fortunately, we have to give thanks to Saul Plaatje, you know, our star journalist at the time, who then wrote, vehemently about this matter and attacked this decision and said that one cannot discriminate on the basis of color or of sex, and that this is ridiculous that a woman of such stature should be excluded from discussions. And in the book, I published the entire text of this attack, and what it showed me is that both he and Charlotte and a small group of young intellectuals at the time were way ahead of their time. And I mean, it took us now till 1994 to be able to vote and to be able to have a constitution that includes everybody. But I mean, then in 1902, Saul Plaatje and Charlotte Mannya Maxeke were the forerunners, and said we should be, everybody should be included in church and in politics.
Our time is up, Zubeida, but just as we conclude this conversation, do you believe that enough is being done to preserve a legacy such as that of Charlotte Maxeke? What do you think should be done?
I think it's starting to be done as a result of essentially the family under the leadership of Tula Sizwe Makanya and the institute that they've set up. And so I think that this birthday celebration is a testimony to their efforts. And it's fantastic that it's now part of the national conversation. And tomorrow we, Number 10 Publishers and The Forge, will host a panel discussion on the book at 6 p.m. And so we are deepening the conversations all the time. And I think we are on the right track.
Well, absolutely fabulous. And thank you so much, Zubeida Jaffer, for sharing some of your insights from your book with us. Award-winning journalist, author and activist Zubeida Jaffer talking to us there about her book about Charlotte Maxeke. It's called Beauty of the Heart, The Life and Times of Charlotte Maxeke. And we will bring you more about Charlotte Maxeke in the last half hour of the show. Right now,